Design Lecture Series. We're kicking off our fall 2025-26 season. I'm Kristen Rogers-Brown. For those of you I haven't met, it's nice to see you. Oh, that's cute. Wow, okay. I want to start with some thank yous, and then I'll introduce our guest. First of all, I want to acknowledge that Portland, Oregon lies within the traditional homelands of the Multnomah, Oregon City Tumwater, Watlala, and Clackamas Chinooks, and the Tualatin Kalapuya peoples, who were relocated to the Grand Ronde Reservation under the Kalapuya, etc. An 1855 ratified treaty, which is also known as the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855. Today, these tribes are part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. The Grand Ronde people continue to maintain a connection to their ancestral homelands and maintain their traditional cultural practices here. So, with that, framing our talk, I want to thank all the people that helped put on this lecture series, including our design crew, this is part of our program at the Graphic Design BFA program with PNCA, but we also have a great extended team of support. Emma is our events coordinator. Flo is our department coordinator and helps out in graphic design and illustration and is kind of half of my brain. Danny is our tech guru and wizard and great person to talk to about movies if you can corner him. And everybody else who's helped set up. Nico Bach is one of our seniors and designed our posters and the look and feel for this series, so thank you, Nico. And then all of you who have been, many of you loyal followers of the series now for a few years, so it's great to see you. And I am gonna be quick with this intro. I first fell in love with Amira's work through listening to her talk at something like this at TypeCon a couple of years ago in Portland. And I was really struck by how she is like very much herself when she talks. I identify with that because she seems perfect, but I am not perfect, and it just felt very authentic. And then I was like, I have a design crush on this person and her work. I'm going to call her and find out she's from Chicago, and as am I. So I think that she has like a really warm heart and a kind of a sassy spirit that many of us from the Midwest carry with us where we go, and she could definitely introduce her in a more authentic herself in a more authentic way than this, but I'm also really impressed with the depth of her research. Going into the history of type in Chicago is really what got me interested in her practice, because she focused not on the traditional, like what I would see as the face of publishing in Chicago, but the type of neighborhoods and the people, the humans, the cultures that all come together in that big, vibrant city. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Amira.
Hey. Thank you all for being here. I want to start by introducing myself. Thank you so much, Kristen, for your introduction, and thank you for giving me space to do this as well. I come here tonight from Chicago. I come here hoping for better worlds. I come here in sadness of the genocides that are happening, of what is happening in our country, known and unknown currently, in my city, in Chicago. I live in Pilsen, where many of the ICE raids are happening. I carry my passport with me. I come here with all of that, but I come here with so much joy as well. Joy in knowing that that is happening and that we are here together to make better things and do better things. So again, I'm Amira, also known as Professor Hegazy, also known as my former student, also my eldest daughter, also known as Sissy, also known as little sister, also known as big sister, also known as friend, also known as dear, also known as Habibti, also only by a very few who really, really love me, known as Miri. I am so lucky to be so loved by all of these people who know me by these names. I am so lucky to be so loved by myself who knows myself by these names. I am many things to myself as well. I'm a designer, I'm an artist, I'm a scholar, I'm a curator, I'm an educator, I'm a printer, I'm a writer, organizer, dreamer, and what a joy to be able to be all of those things in myself. And that is something that I have earned, something that I know was so hard for me when I was younger. I started my art career trying to be a lawyer. I really wanted to go into law. I thought that law was what was going to get me to where I wanted to be. I thought I was going to be a politician, and I spent 3 years in undergrad studying politics. I had the great pleasure of spending about 1.5 years in Cairo. My family is Egyptian, so maybe it's a little bit of a hack to go back home, but I grew up in Detroit. So it was really special to go back to Cairo without my family, without my father with me, to know it on my own terms. And now understanding Middle Eastern politics, understanding a lot of what was happening, gender roles, also the religion, also the laws, I was able to know it in a new way. This was also right after the Arab Spring. So these murals really struck me, and I apologize if some of them are not super high quality. During that period of time, it was hard sometimes to get great photographs, and it was sometimes even harder to get them out. I have a book that I bought during that period of time that is now illegal to own in Egypt, that is of all of these murals and of all of this work. During this period of time, I learned that many artists and designers were fleeing the country, or else they may have been detained or killed or, who knows, disappeared. During this period of time in studying these things, what I found the most exciting was how these murals and what folks were doing was speaking perhaps even louder than anything the government could do. That outside of traditional literacy, people were speaking to one another. I remember stencils throughout the neighborhood indicating when things would happen, where they would happen, indicating safety, indicating not. I found myself then at these intersections of who I should be and what made me curious. At that point in time, at 2019, I don't think it would have been fair to say who I wanted to be. I didn't really know who that was yet. But I found myself at these intersections trying to figure out what was happening. Who was I and why? Why any of this? Between being a politician and being political, I found myself in the middle of many things, but not fitting in any of them. Much like my introduction, much like the names I am known by, I couldn't name myself one thing. And I felt like I had to. So at these intersections, I then allowed myself to look. And by looking, I was able to see. And finally, by seeing, I was able to stay, to linger, and understand that all of these things were happening as was I. And that was okay. I didn't have to do just one thing, that any new thing is made by someone new, that I didn't need someone else to be what I needed to be. I just needed to move forward. And by moving forward, I meet people like Kristen and like you all who also live in this way. And sometimes it's really hard to know that. I met one of these people, this is me. I met one of these people in undergrad in a drawing class. I went to a liberal arts college where I had to take drawing, thank God. This woman, my professor, Leanne Beavers, she's a printmaker and a dear, dear mentor and friend now. She saw me drawing and she said, "Amira, you're a printer." I was like, oh, what's that mean? And she was like, "Well, you draw like a printer, And I was like, well, I'm about to go to Egypt. And she's like, well, when you come back, come into print 2, and then that's going to be your major. And I'm like, but I'm studying politics. She's like, you can do both. You're a printer, and I'm excited to see you when you come back. I told this to my parents. My parents were like, oh, but you're still going to be a lawyer, right? I said, yes, of course. Of course. And then my mom was like, you know, Amira, this is good. You can make art just for the love of it. Like, for the love of it. For the love of it after I see what art did in Egypt, after I see how it behaves, after I see the language that it transcends, for the love of it. For the love of it, I'm going to do more than just make art. But thank God she didn't think that at that point. So I come here hoping that we may dissect that. I remember some years ago explaining my research to my therapist, because at that point it was important for her to know, I guess. And she says, Amira, you know, research is me search. I was like, oh, girl. And in that, maybe as she was cliche, she knew she was, and she said cliches are useful because they're true. I then did that backlog that I give you to know that now, a professor myself, teaching other people, this thing about love and being loved and knowing that there are multitudes of things and that they come together to make another multitude of things didn't start here. It didn't start at the research. It started way before that. I live in Chicago. I'm from Detroit. Okay. From Detroit. Detroit also super cool, but I live in Chicago. I've been there for about 8 years now. I give you this just in case you haven't had the great pleasure of being there. Chicago is a really interesting place. It is organized into 77 municipal community areas. This is what the government calls neighborhoods. Okay? These are the government neighborhoods. So just by the organization of how it is seen by the government, how it's organized in our archives, this is what it looks like. To Chicagoans, this is what it looks like. Chicago, as we speak about it, has over 200 self-defined neighborhoods which shift and change. And, you know, sometimes you're like, is that street in this neighborhood or that neighborhood? And it depends maybe on what restaurant you're going to, who's there, what they're doing, who you're with, perhaps. These things change by who moves in, who moves out. These neighborhoods shift. Backing up a moment, I'm in Chicago, okay? I finished graduate school in the middle of the pandemic. Really awful time to finish graduate school. Really awful time to get an MFA in printing. And I am applying for pretty much everything I can find. A professor of mine sent me this job that I was like, this is too good to be true. I am so unqualified for this. And he was like, whatever, you got time. It's a pandemic. Apply for it. So I did. And I was shocked I got the position. And I'm even more shocked now knowing who applied for it then, because they are my colleagues. And they're also incredible. So I started working as a researcher at the Design Museum of Chicago. Understand, I have a degree in printing. I did not study design. At this point, I had taken 2 classes in design, frankly, because I thought maybe I might need to make money. Folks aren't buying prints like that. I should learn something about it. I had learned typography. I had learned layout on the bed of a press, on the bed of a Vandercook. I had learned how to carve type way before I could even use Photoshop. Honestly, I only learned how to use Photoshop a couple years ago. So I become a designer by taking this job, a design researcher, a design historian. This project was called Letters Beyond Form Chicago Types. It was funded through the Terra Foundation, and the Design Museum had some money, and they're like, okay, this is what you're researching. And I said, okay, what is that? And they're like, well, you're just researching typography in Chicago. Just figure that out. Which you all as students and designers know that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing. Typography in Chicago? Chicago has such a huge history of printing, a huge history of design, and a huge present of design, frankly. So with that, I started to, and maybe to my benefit not being a designer, I was able to come at it from new histories, from strange histories, from conversations, from the weird stuff. So I looked up what typography was, and Britannica told me it's the design or selection of letter forms to be organized into words and sentences to be disposed in blocks of type as printing upon a page. And I was like, well, I know about that, printing. But from these stories, I was like, it's more than that, and less than that. So I came up with my own. Typography, to me, and in my research, and as I was talking to folks, could simply be defined as the design, shape, and use of letters with intention. I came to this because there were so many letters in Chicago that were not this. Speak graffiti, lettering, all of these things that we think about now and we care about and we get excited about. I talked to so many tattoo artists, graffiti writers, all of these people who knew letters, honestly, way more than many of the designers I spoke to. So this felt much more natural, much more inclusive. This was what I was given as Chicago Design, and it is a blessing to work with the Design Museum at this period of time because of the way that they trust me. I had designed one typeface before this, so I wasn't totally a novice. I had used a lot of type, I had laid out a lot of pages, I had carved letters, I had written letters. But when looking at this, it's beautiful. The types of R. Hunter Middleton for the Ludlow Typecraft Company are beautiful, and I encourage you to look at them. He's definitely sort of a unsung type designer. Really great stuff in Chicago. If you go to the Newberry, they have a lot of his work. But when I looked at this didn't look like my Chicago. This didn't look like what I saw, what I knew, what we talked about, what we lived. So I went to Pilsen, which is now my neighborhood. I live there. It's super cool. Come visit. I walked around Pilsen, and this is what I saw. I saw this beautiful mural by Mateo Zapata and Pablo Serrano made in 2020. You can see here the lettering is reminiscent of indigenous styles, also mixed with Latin styles, also mixed with Southwestern styles. We see sign painting, we see murals. So we see the combination of so many different things of all of these people who are living there, of their histories and of their respect for one another. It looked like this. Where is the grid? The grid is fit this on a sign, bro. The grid is I need to sell some more beer, make it work. How do we understand this within typography? Am I supposed to think that this is not? No. Because this is what my world looks like. We have words cut in two, we have an A cut in half, a T cut in half. Make it work. This is what my Chicago looked like, strange and imperfect, but this is what it was. So I started to think, typography and Chicago, what did that look like? And then I realized it was really about typography and community. In these places, I saw different styles, and unfortunately, we only have an hour, but if you've got more time, I would love to tell you about many of the other neighborhoods. So typography and community, the different ways in which all of these styles and things showed up. And then I got to typography and love, and by this point, you're like, girl, what's love got to do with it? So let's figure out what is love, okay? Because I think that's one of those things that thankfully I get to work with my students on. is really trying to figure out, what do these words mean? We learn words we don't know, but how do we learn the words we do? How do we learn those words, especially in a way that we can research them and care about them and talk about them? Between you and I, we know what love means, but between me and typography, I gotta figure that out. So I started reading, and I read a lot. For me, love is a verb. This definition is taken from Bell Hook's All About Love, New Visions, who really speaks to love and loving in a way that is not always romantic, in a way that is communal and between folks. She says, love is the will to nurture one's own or another's spiritual growth, revealed through acts of care, respect, knowing, and assuming responsibility. So love is these elements, and we see these elements bolded here. Spiritual growth. When we talk about the spirit, what I think here is our ethics, our spirit, what we mean to ourselves, okay? How do we define ourselves out of our bodily self? We exist here, but our spirit cares about these things. My spirit cares about other people. My spirit cares about justice. My spirit cares a lot about politics, a lot about honesty, and a lot about love. Your spirit may care about something else, and I, in loving you, want you to grow in that, not necessarily in what my spirit wants. It is an act of care, which maybe we don't know what care is. Care, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to respect you. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to believe you. I'm going to know you by learning about you, by asking about you. I am going to assume responsibility for the things that I do to you, with you. That to love you is to be responsible to all of these things and to show up. So speaking of care, often you might think about that and you're like, okay, well, loving and caring, they're like kind of the same thing. I, care about you. Love is like a little bit more closer. So I found a definition for care. Care is also a verb. It's also a thing we do. It is not something that we feel. You can feel cared for, but you care. You act toward that. It is everything we do directly to help others to meet their basic needs, develop or sustain their basic capabilities, and alleviate or avoid pain of suffering in an attentive, responsible, and respectful manner. This definition comes from a very sort of dense theoretical article about what care is, and I encourage you to read it. It's actually really phenomenal in trying to understand, like, how do we care about people, and how is that different than loving, and what are those elements within even a design framework or within our own lives. So caring as opposed to loving, right? We're just going to think about those side by side. Caring is about meeting basic needs. So I care for my neighbor by giving the unhoused person money because that's what I have to offer. By giving food that is extra in my fridge to the Love Fridge, which is a communal fridge system in Chicago. By making sure that my waste is not just thrown away, that I can do something with it. This is how I can care within my means, by caring for the basic needs of someone else. Their basic capabilities, which is, just general functioning as a human, and to alleviate and avoid the pain of suffering. So whatever I can do to not make someone suffer more, that is caring. That someone sitting on the street, I'm not going to kick them. That is not very caring. I'm going to walk around them kindly. These things are very different than love, right? These are very basic. Love has that spirit element, has some sense of growth and responsibility. And I just want to give us one more definition. I think this one also often gets confused, but is really important to my research. As when I'm talking to folks, when I'm learning from folks, I would like to empathize. And we talk about empathy as if we know it, and I think this is also one of those words that we think about a lot, but don't dissect. So empathy is also a verb. here. It is the complex imaginative process in which an observer simulates another person's situational psychological states, while maintaining a clear self-other differentiation to understand how someone feels without including their own self. So this means it's not these folks that we see on TikTok who are like, oh my God, I'm an empath. That just like makes me hurt so bad. I can't leave my house. No, that's not empathy. And maybe that's how they feel. And I can empathize with them. Empathy isn't seeing someone else's pain and feeling your pain and being in pain. When we do that, we incapacitate ourselves from being able to care. We then put ourselves in a place of suffering. When we empathize with someone, we think back, okay, I have been in pain before. I have been in pain and I know this. And from knowing this, I can come to a place of caring for them by remembering how I felt. Oftentimes, we are in these situations where we try to empathize, but we often make that thing about us, and we try to get that other person to hear about our situation, how we felt that way. To empathize and to be able to care about people, and especially in this situation as a researcher and as a designer, you want to listen to them, you want to believe them, and if you can empathize. If you have been in a similar situation, you can empathize, but you may not have been, and that is okay. If it's a bad thing, that is wonderful that you cannot empathize, that you have never been in that situation. You can sympathize, and you can ask them, and you can care. So from there, I would like to think moving forward about love as this. Love is not just caring. Love is not just empathizing. Love is not just respect, knowledge, spiritual growth, trust, admiration, self-awareness, responsibility, release, joy, and safety. It is all of them. Love is all of these things together, which is really, really, really hard to do. It's really great to say that you love something, but what does it mean to love something? How do we actually act toward loving that thing? How do you become responsible for the caring, for the knowledge, for the growth, to actually trust someone? That is a lot. And how does design do that? We're going to be done with the definitions soon. Last one. Design does this by acting within a code-switching sort of narrative. Have you been in a place where you talk to somebody and maybe you just look at them? Maybe you just say 2 words and they understand and you feel like, okay, I can do this. You know what I'm saying. Everyone else in this room does not understand me, but someone does. Now think, have you been to a place that does that? Have you walked into an architecture that's like, oh my gosh, your shoulders relax. Your jaw unclenches. You can imagine yourself there. You know you're safe. You know that you're home. Design does that. Design can do the same thing. It shifts using our visual languages from the unknown to the known. And the problem is that you can't do that unless you know. You can't design for someone. You can't design something that makes someone seen and cared for without seeing and caring for them. Let's take this, for example. These are 2 posters made for pretty much the same reason. The one here on the left is called Chicago Weeps, designed by Tom, Dick, and Harry Creative in 2022. This is a campaign that is meant to promote safety in Chicago by trying to put these posters up to show these children in these possibly violent situations, to maybe shock people into not being violent in their neighborhoods. It reads, "Chicago is supposed to be a stacker of wheat, not caskets." That comes from a poem, a very famous poem about Chicago that maybe not being from Chicago, you don't know, which is okay. And I imagine probably very many people in Chicago don't know it because they didn't go to a school which perhaps afforded them the time to care about poetry, to memorize poetry in this way. And perhaps many of those people are the people who are in those violent neighborhoods. So when I look at this poster, I think, wow, that's a, beautifully designed poster, really clean. There's a lot of great things happening. But who is this for? If this is meant to deter crime in Chicago, is it actually speaking to those people? And then I look at the other one. The other one, it's not quite as clean. We don't see the graphics rendered in that really high quality way. There's no photographic processes. It's pretty clearly hand lettered. This lettering is by somebody named Sir Charles, who runs Made in Chi-Town with Love. He was a former gang member. He left the gang life, got sober, and had children. At his daughter's school, there was a shooting, a drive-by gang shooting. See, gangs in Chicago, they have a specific type of lettering that is owned by each gang. You write an S of someone else's style, you are at risk. You are at risk of getting hurt, you are at risk of getting shot. And he knew that when he was making this, when he left that life. But what he did is that he put on a mask, covered his face, went around his daughter's school, and started using gang lettering to speak to the gang members directly to make these messages of peace. And now he actually collaborates with gang members, ex-gang members, to think through what they can do with their lettering to pull themselves out of this world. And this, while maybe not as beautiful, maybe not as clean, maybe not as what you would think your professors want, is so much better designed because it functions. It actually does what it wants to do. This is loving. This, when written, when shown, expresses to someone like, hey, I know you. I have been you. And I am here telling you it's okay. You are safe. You will come out of this. This design is loving because it loves. It's loving because that person knows. It's loving because it is respectful. It is building on this legacy. It is making sure that these kids know that they'll be okay. So design tools, when unmediated by outsiders, become transformed beyond a capital or power-based enforcement. They affirm a sense of belonging, safety, knowledge, care, and love. So with this, we can look at something like this in my neighborhood, and we can see this as a guest book. We can say, hey, yeah, Pilsen's really cool. See all these folks who come through? Like, what? We can't read that sign. That's okay. They're not going to replace it. We can look at this and care about it like we would a book from the Kelmscott Press. We can look at this and understand that this is a community speaking to one another, that these folks feel safe to write on this sign to say, hey, what's up? When I was walking around with some graffiti writers, they told me that sometimes they'll tag in a neighborhood just to show their friends, hey, I made it here, and I was safe. Come around this corner, you can tag over there. All of these different things, these ways of writing, even if we don't understand them, have meaning, are working, are language beyond language. That within these design communities, we often are excluded because it is not for us. And that's okay. Design doesn't have to be for everyone to be good. I look at doors like this in my neighborhood, based on Loteria by Rick Garza. We see these doors and maybe tourists say, oh, that's cool. But within the neighborhood, they know like, okay, yeah, there's other Mexicans. Yeah, I know that. This is fun. This is great. There's this code switching, right? That we can understand it. We can care about it at face value. But if we are loved by this thing and the folks who made it are also loved by us, there's a deeper meaning, that design becomes more. It is not just a way to communicate. Language is a way to communicate belonging, a way to communicate understanding, safety, care, and to reinforce the values of a community. Many of these things within our universe are often labeled vernacular. I'd like to just highlight this quote from a colleague of mine, Norman Teague. He says to Pia Singh, "I was mad at how design history had erased people like us, labeling everything that came from us as vernacular. I trust my work will be placed on the right side of history, wherever that ends up." Vernacular is a word born from verna, which means a house-born slave, someone who is of us but not us. Something else but ours, technically. Perhaps something less than. And I'm not trying to tell you that you can't use that word, but I don't. I think that we're allowed to make better words. We're allowed to make better things. It's funny to put a QR code, but my students are always taking photos, and I thought maybe this was a good way to give this to you. This is a really much more technical, much less beautiful, step-by-step breakdown of what it actually means to design with love as a method. So as I spoke to these type designers, as I spoke to the folks who were actually working in this way, I was able to start to break these things down in steps and break these things down in a way that we could then say, okay, well, who can actually do this for this person? Can I design with love for this community? Probably not if I don't know them. So there's all these qualifications. So I encourage you to spend time with that. Email me, let's chat, Zoom, coffee. I'm here till Saturday. Thank you for being okay with the QR code. There's another one. This was all part of an exhibition that was called Letters Beyond Form that was at the Design Museum of Chicago. My team consisted of myself, Paulina Montes, Liana Fu, and Jillian Giles. The exhibition was great. It was public. It talked through a lot of these ideas in a very physical way in this space. We have a catalog as well, but in case you want to see how those things were exhibited and a lot of those materials, I encourage you to check that out online. I also just want to highlight that this work is collective. This work was not done by me, although I have the great honor of being able to present it and speak to you about it. It was developed with a lot of different artists, designers, graffiti writers, tattoo artists, lots of different types of folks in Chicago, and funded, thankfully, through the Terra Foundation, supported by UIC, where I teach as well. So very quickly, I just want to show you, you might be thinking, okay, yeah, that's great, but I'm not always able to design for the people that I love. I'm here getting a design degree. I've gone through this process. I probably have to work with clients. How does love have to do with my practice? How do I build this into the way that I work? And I try to do this myself, so I'm going to offer some current and recently finished projects as an example. I have a group of people that I meet with every other week to dream. We sit down for 2 hours together at a coffee shop somewhere in Chicago with the express purpose of dreaming. Those people are Pascal Ife Williams, Emilia Chico, and Noor Arafat. They are designers, scholars, organizers. We sit down and make maps like this. We think about our relationship to money and perhaps how that limits us from thinking beyond the horrors of what's happening. We think perhaps that the amplitude of our horrors needs to be matched by the amplitude of our imagination. We ask questions like this: how do we dream without the pressure of possible, maybe, or perhaps that's production? How do we allow ourselves to dream beyond what we think we can do? We found that even in our states of power and support, that we are not people who are not resourced. We were stopping ourselves from thinking bigger and beyond what we knew that we could do. So we found each other to help each other dream. To help each other dream forward in today, to help each other dream forward in tomorrow, for our future ancestors, as we are future ancestors. We talk a lot about time. These are values that we think about: consent, creativity, relationality, communication, adaptability, interdependence, collaboration. This is a small way that I can foster my community, that I can think about with other designers while we are not designing something necessarily for other people. We are holding each other accountable. We are allowing each other a space to think through our values and consider, how do we act in these in our daily lives? How do we help each other with our different skill sets? How do we support each other, perhaps financially, resources, materially, just with support? So we dream, and it's really, really, really lovely. Another project that I just finished is super fun. It's called A2Z, Learning Through Lego and Letterpress. This is a project that was brought to me by my colleague Pedro Neves, and we took on a graduate student apprentice, Shannon Morrissey. This project, I think about love in the way that I must collaborate. These people are part of my community. Although I am working in this capacity as a designer, as a printer, I have to come to this in a very gracious way. Working inside of a university system, there's a lot of teaching that happens. I often print in my own studio. I print by commission. I make books with and for other people. I'm trained as a fine press printer, and I use those skills doing that. So in this process, I had to employ what I like to call a loving ethic, and thinking through, how do I become more generous with these people? How do I, using my skill set, teach and show and foster the legacy of this thing that I love? There are not many people who are letterpress printers. There are not many presses available publicly or to folks. This entire project was letterpress printed. We pulled about 27,400 prints. It was a lot. This was in a matter of about 6 months. We invited 36 different designers from across the world to design a letter form using Lego. We gave them 11 different Lego pieces that they could choose from, and we gave them a single letter. We gave them 5 colors to choose from, these ones, and this diagram so that they might understand how overprint works in letterpress. Many of these folks are digital designers, and we know that on other continents, sometimes presses are even less available than they are here. Maybe some of these designers may not have interacted with a letterpress before, so we were trying to be generous in that generosity, that respect, that knowing, that spiritual growth, allowing them to grow with us, allowing them to be part of this generosity is incredibly important. They could choose 3 of these colors, and then we printed. We printed these Legos, we put them on the press. Wow, that was the first letter we printed. I was just having a moment. Last week was the first time I showed this book publicly. And then you come out the other side with a 3-color print of a letter. It was really incredible. It was really quick. And through this, there was a lot of collaboration. And my colleague and I are on very different ends of the design spectrum. He focuses on code to print. And I am a very, very analog person. So in our conversations, there was a lot of patience. There was a lot of grace. That is what I mean by a loving ethic. That I can come to this and know that perhaps he doesn't understand what I'm saying, but I also don't understand what he's saying. And both of us being frustrated in a collaboration, sometimes just have to say, hey, let's just go get a milkshake. Let's stop talking about this. Let's not do that. Or he'd see me printing and he'd be like, I am not going to do that today. I'm just going to walk away and not say that thing. And I as well would do that. That within these situations, we learn how to respect each other's boundaries, respect each other's space, to be able to make something beautiful. That sometimes collaboration isn't, perfect in that way. That sometimes you have to learn from this other person where you can teach them. People will not learn something that they do not want to learn. You cannot teach someone if they are not willing. This was our room where we were putting things up. And this is us at UIC on our Vandercook. This project was, really, really big. Really, really big. I encourage you guys to find me on Instagram and see all of the letters. I apologize that I can't show them all today. And then finally, the last project and how I'm thinking about these things within my work is a new project that I'm printing this week when I get home on Sunday with my collaborator, Khalid Ibrahim. He runs a photography business called Eat Pomegranate. He does commercial work, artwork, really transcendent through the ways that he's presenting himself. This project is based in love, in the way that we both love poetry. In his culture, he's from Pakistan, in his culture, people, when they do not know what to say, will respond in poetry. And they will respond in verse back and forth to each other. The first time I met him, he did this to me, but he actually said something in Farsi, which he does not speak. And I was so just taken by that, because I read a lot of poetry and I memorize poetry, but English poetry. So we started talking, we're like, how do we foster this as something that we both care about, something that we both love, that is maybe not always accessible, not always easy, and especially in Urdu, it's even harder because there's maybe less speakers that you or I have never read an Urdu poem until now. So we started thinking about that. So I letterpress printed these Urdu couplets. In Urdu, they write ghazals. A ghazal is a poem that is long but also exists in single couplets, and those single couplets can be taken out. A couplet is 2 lines of poetic verse. So we're planning to send these to 250 people. The first 3 editions of it are going to be free, and there's going to be another QR code for you all to sign up if you'd like to receive one. But what we were thinking is that this is maybe even not legible to some Urdu speakers, because just like poetry in English, it can be difficult. So we decided that we should add a little explanation. So here we think through translation and perhaps what it is to translate and not tell. How do we translate the meaning of something as we are in motion? What is thought in motion? What is poetry and art in motion? So these are going to be sent probably within the next month or so. It'll be this piece, the letterpress piece, and also a photograph. And here's the QR code if you'd like to sign up. I'll just leave it there for a second. I would love to send it to you. So, in conclusion, I'd like to think that I, still do it for the love of it, but for many other things. And the love of it isn't what pays my rent. The love of it isn't what keeps me going, what brought me here, what excites me to teach my students. It's the love in it. The love in it that I give, that I receive, that feeds me. It's the love that it creates. Knowing that my student also knows how to letterpress print now is incredible, knowing that she takes that gift, that skill with her, and maintains this very, very old practice inside of her hands, inside of her body, for the love of that, for the love of the shared community, and for the love of the legacy that we all get to carry on within our communities, within our practice, within our work, within our aesthetic. For the love of all of that, I thank you. Thank you all. I think we have a little bit of time for questions. Is that right, Kristen? I have like 4 other slideshows. If you're like, I need to see more of that, I probably have more of it. So what's up?
I've got a, maybe this isn't working, but I've got a microphone I can carry around, maybe. If it might not be heard. I guess it's not working. So we'll just, like, we're allowed, right? Go ahead and ask questions. Because we have a live stream, we'll monitor the live stream chat here too. And then Amira will respond if you just kind of want to summarize what the person said.
Totally, I got you.
No questions. This is a
Yeah, sorry, I may have been just like too chill. It happens. Yeah, what's up? Hey.
I really like you and what you're doing. It's really awesome, and I've been fascinated with letterform since I was a child. And I ended up following sign painters around and started painting signs when I was in high school.
Amazing.
And as a graphic designer, painter, painting mountains and painting scenes and painting murals.
Yeah,
Always in love with letterforms and inventing them and studying them and
totally.
later. And I'm so excited to meet you and see what you're doing and what you presented. It's very fitting because I work from love.
Thank you.
So nice to hear somebody else talk about working from love with typography. I mean, it's like
Totally.
you get it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Chicago has a really, really rich history of sign painting, and I apologize for not being able to show much of that. The tattoo sign that I showed you was painted. Chicago is actually like a mecca for sign painting. Many of the traditions and the styles were born in Chicago. There's actually a style that's called Chicago style. So I can totally geek out with you on that. It's such a special thing. Thank you so much.
I've got a question from the live stream back here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?
So somebody here said, this is Amber, says, you mentioned politics being a part of your work. And I'm curious if you've had any luck with pushing back against graffiti removal funding from the city, or have you done any work in that capacity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, being political, have I done any work to push back against graffiti removal in the city? That is not something that I have personally done, but I work with organizations that do. Understanding that Chicago is a really large bureaucratic system, and I individually am not invested in that place. But I do come with a different sort of authority to say this is valuable. And within that capacity, I can work with anti-gentrification organizations in Chicago, but also through commissioning work and collecting work. So this is maybe not answering that question totally, but what I have done to increase the visibility and the care around those things is making sure that in this exhibition at the Design Museum, maybe it's important for me to tell you specifically where the Design Museum is. It's right downtown. It is across from the Bean. It is across from the Cultural Center. It is in the center of Chicago, okay? I'm still laughing that I did this, and I'm really glad I did it, but I put like Oz Cooper, like Cooper Black drawings next to graffiti, which was a thing some of my, design colleagues and researchers were like, what? You're saying these are like the same thing in the same world? I think I get to move in this world with the power that I know I have. And the power that I have is to, write things into history, which is kind of incredible. So in doing that, and in publishing this catalog, and in commissioning work from graffiti writers, from ex-gang members, we were able to financially support these things with money from a major foundation, the Terra Foundation, put these into major collections in Chicago. So the Design Museum doesn't hold a collection. It doesn't accession the work that it commissions. So we donated things like that to the National Museum of Mexican Art. And then there they become collected. And by being collected, they then have a history of value, which is why a mural versus graffiti are such different things. Yeah. Totally. Are you archiving the graffiti artists? You know what's really cool? I don't have to. So I spent about 6 months running around with a graffiti crew. Because that's the thing about learning from people, is that for me, I need to get their permission. And a lot of times to get their permission, they have to know that you're cool, that you actually respect what they do. A lot of folks go in and try to talk about something without knowing it. So I allegedly was out with these people, allegedly painting. And I learned that they have archivists. The crews have archivists. They have archives going back to the beginning of their crews. Most do, at least the oldest ones, especially in Chicago. They have big albums of photographs. Most of those things have been digitized. They have photos, they have videos, bro, allegedly. I went to this one birthday party and they just maybe had videos playing of perhaps graffiti and perhaps law enforcement chasing them. And it was just the funniest thing. And I was like, whoa, 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 this whole community is like kind of about that. Like if it wasn't erased, it wouldn't be graffiti. That there's something, the ephemerality is an essential part of what it is. That if it didn't get destroyed, it would not be part of their practice anymore. So I don't, but it exists. It's so cool. You just become a homie, man. Yeah, they gotta trust you, because that's the safety of their entire crew right there.
I've got a working mic now, so if you want to ask a question.
There is a question here, yeah.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
Being a typographic artist or having that focus while existing in such a well-established space, did you find yourself like being in the classical, kind of taking the classical approach and then diverging into the less classical approach, or did you just kind of like put yourself into the less classical approach and proceed?
I think because I come to type not with a design education, but with a printing education, I come to type thinking about materiality much more than I've found designers do. So what I think of as formal is probably different than what a traditional design perspective thinks of as formal. So I think what I ended up caring a lot about was actually watching all of these different practitioners do their work. And that was one of the big classifications and underlying reasoning in grouping all of this together, was that they all practiced with the same rigor. When I was perhaps apprenticing in this graffiti crew, I had to draw my letters so much more than I have ever had to, ever in any design print education. Like the amount of time they made me spend with different types of pens, and I had to get maybe a tag down in like 3 seconds. Like the amount of, the speed you have to do it with, because you are endangering everyone else around you if you take time. So kind of, but a different formal. I came from the formal of making, not the formal of aesthetic. And I found that that was kind of irregular to a lot of the designers that I talked to. But when I spoke to artists about it, they were like, oh yeah, of course. Because like printing is printing, whether it's a shirt or a vessel, like a box or the floor. Like printing is printing. So when I was thinking about making letters, I was like, yeah, they're all practicing the same way. They're all thinking about the exact same things. Like, truly, it's kind of crazy. They all are thinking about the exact same things, but their rules are different. And within that, then we can group them all together. Yeah. Yeah.
So they gave you access to their tag books?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really incredible. It was a really special thing to be trusted by them, and to be able to foster their work. And that's one thing that I'm still working with some of these people. Sir Charles, who I showed that poster from, his piece was actually featured in the Dia de los Muertos exhibition with an ofrenda that just opened this past week. And he was there and he was saying like, what a special thing to be able to honor the lost gang members, to be able to honor them in such a special and honorable and important place in the United States and in Chicago. That I think, I don't think I have the power right now to go into City Hall and tell them that they need to do this with graffiti, but I do have the power to work with these institutions to build value so that then when I have that moment to go to City Hall, I can give them my receipts, I can give them my citations, and I can show them like, you know, the Art Institute has this, the Newberry has this. This is important in history and you are the one that's erasing it. You don't want to look like that. Yeah, it's really, really a special thing.
I just say, this city has recently stepped up the eraser of the graffiti. My studio overlooks a major, we used to be an all-city wall that the person who owned the wall used to paint it over every about 8 months so it could be restart.
Oh, cool.
And so I can see some of the archivists and I've met a couple of them. But the city now doesn't let the wall be painted on at all. They erase every day, overnight.
They erase it overnight? Oh my gosh. So for those of you who are maybe online, this person was just talking about how there's a place here in Portland that used to get a lot of graffiti on it and it would stay for a while and then it would get painted over, but now they're painting this over every night. Yeah, that's what was happening in Cairo. And that's what really incited me to like start caring about this sort of stuff because it was doing like so much. Like the graffiti was doing so much in informing people in Egypt of what was happening and allowing also media to know what was happening, right? That like by putting something up on a wall, even if it's just visual, we saw that there were a lot of portraits of the martyrs, the people who had been killed in there, to be able to like immortalize them and take these photos that like these folks maybe didn't have funerals. These people, most of them did, but maybe they didn't look like that when their funeral happened. These sorts of things, it's so important, even if one person just snaps a photo. It does maybe what the printing press did in its early days. It makes information accessible. Totally. It's kind of shocking when they do that. It almost incites people to do more graffiti. It's this funny thing where they don't actually solve the problem by erasing it. They actually make the problem worse. Not that it's a problem. They make what they think of as a problem worse. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally.
What you see about this.
Yeah, so this person was just asking about the difference between tagging and graffiti writing. What would be like a full piece versus just a simple tag, and the value of tagging and what that does. And I think that's the whole thing, is that it's not supposed to have value to you. And that's what it is that this is like a secret language that they get to speak to each other, that they get to say things that they don't want you to know. They get to tell each other things that are only for them within that community. So I think that's why, number one, folks maybe don't like it, is because they don't have access to it, and that makes them feel uncomfortable in their own neighborhoods. But I think if we flip that and think about the lack of access that many of the people who are tagging, that the lack of access that they have within their own communities as well, perhaps due to race, due to their financial situation, their educational situation, it's a small amount of access that we give up. And to be, really upset about that sometimes it angers you more than it will ever do anything to them. It's these languages that maybe do not seem welcoming, but are like hyper functional within small communities that I'm really spending a lot of time researching, because they are so hard to know. And also within that, I have a responsibility not to talk about many of those things, because those people trust me, and I don't want to betray them in telling more than I should. Yes.
I would say that some, at least my exposures, you're talking about people who feel they're at war, in a war that was not necessarily they declared.
Mm-hmm.
So would you expect people at war or without a war to be declared, would reveal their tagging?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Totally. It can definitely be like that. And especially in Chicago, if you're looking for some really interesting gang history, Chicago gang history is kind of wild, because Chicago gangs started out as like party clubs or like baseball teams. It was literally just like clubs, like the Mayor Daily, like the Mayor's Daily, the first Mayor Daily of Chicago was part of a gang technically, but it's like they were just groups of young men who were looking for a way to organize and be like, hey, we're gonna throw a party on the block, but those people over there aren't allowed. And then they got matching jackets and they did that thing, and only until drugs came into Chicago did it become really violent. The police also had a gang. Like the police had their own gang that was the police gang. So it's this thing that was all about turf and money and yeah, these wars that these people just inherited by not being able to move out of their neighborhoods, or just the way that law enforcement was acting within those neighborhoods that kept them there. So yeah, they had to communicate to one another without being heard or known, and that's why each gang has their own hand style. Chicago hand styles look very different than like LA hand styles, even though they're sort of linked by this Chicano sort of identity. The materials that they use to write with and the sort of shapes that they make are different. And it's very, very subtle. But I have some folks that I'll like walk around Chicago with. They'll be like, oh yeah, that's like this gang and that's this gang. And like even in the concrete, they'll see a mark and they're like, oh yeah, this is like their territory, because you can see that. And it's very subtle, but yeah, very encoded.
I have an online question
Yes,
here.
yeah.
It's a little heady.
Okay, I got you.
But interesting, I think. What are some terms you're thinking through that disrupt like the subject position of that word vernacular? And specifically, they think the subtext of the question is kind of how you might shake off the quality of othering that happens by using that word.
I mean, frankly, loving is a really good one. Because if I say that tag is really loving, it upholds, respects, knows, enforces an ethic of that community, it makes something that is really othering become something that is like, okay, this is building, this is great, this is growing. I do know that word can be a little woo-woo. I know that. And without this whole presentation, it's, sometimes hard to get there. So I often say it's like designed within community. This is work that is has a really specific audience. I just try to say what it actually is. I think vernacular is the word that we use to describe things that we are uncomfortable naming. We have so many words for different types of modernisms. So many. Like, why don't we have words for the modernisms that don't come out of Europe? Like with just vernacular. It's just this way of understanding like where our history was written and how we were all taught and where design education comes from, that if we just call it what it is, it's often a really great way around vernacular, which is really just something out of the printer's handbook. We just call everything what it is in French, Italian, or English. That's all it is. So maybe that's not a great thing. I've been trying to work on a better word, but yeah, I'm researching that paper right now. So hopefully forthcoming.
I think that's a really good comment for like folks in this room who are studying to think about, like, as we're learning so much so quickly, that sometimes just like telling it like it is that most accurate, most respectful, most loving way,
Totally. We use so much jargon sometimes to sound smart that nobody understands anything. And that's half the reason why I spent so much time in definitions, because I wanted you to know what I was actually talking about. Because I think sometimes we throw around these words and don't allow ourselves to say what we mean, especially in academia. Well, great. I feel
Thank you
good.
so much.
Thank you, guys.